Hello and welcome to Tommyknockers Spirits of the Mines. Quite a while ago, I made a video that was focused on a handful of different type of cryptids that are said to roam about caves. While I still need to make a second part to this, I figured it was time to explore these dark caverns for a very different type of being. This would be, of course, creatures of the Fae. As of late, I have seen more and more interest in these beings, with my friend Daniel Bishop recently asking about Tommyknockers, as well as my longtime viewer named Robert Akery the Blogfather and Alicia R. also requesting the topic. I should mention that I will include this in my Cryptid Spotlight playlists, but I really don't feel like it belongs there. Maybe it should be added to the largely unused Mythic Spotlight section. So get your flashlights ready, and maybe a pickaxe, as we venture deep into the earth to uncover the lore behind these really odd spirits. These creatures have their lore found in the Cornish people, but stories are also found with the Welsh, Devon, and people of Staffordshire. The Cornish people are found in the UK and have their roots tied to Celtic origins, which makes a lot of sense when you talk about creatures like this. The stories of these beings tend to be linked to tin mines in the area dating back to the Roman Empire. Even though the Romans left the area by 410 AD, the stories about a creature known as knockers, Tommyknockers, or originally Tommyknackers, remained. The name Tommy is highly debated, with some saying it was used as a generic term for describing an unknown person, or in this case, entity, while others claim it originates from the slang term used for British soldiers, which was Tommy Atkins. While largely known in the local areas, word of this didn't start to spread until the 1820s, when Cornish immigrants started to begin working in mines located in Pennsylvania. These spirits would then become more well known as the miners migrated further west during the gold and silver rushes at the time. Most describe these beings as standing 2 feet tall, having long white beards, a large head, wrinkly greenish skin, and long arms. Traditionally, they wear clothing that is similar to human workers in a mine. While they can be seen working their pickaxes mining ore, it is unclear what their goal is or what they do with the minerals that they manage to dig up. It is said that these creatures actually live underground, and that the deeper someone digs, the more likely they are to come across Tommyknockers. In other variations, it is believed that some Tommyknockers actually hid themselves in the luggage of the immigrants and followed them to the mines when they landed in the US. For the most part, they don't seem hindered by the presence of humans working in the mines, and there are many stories that claim they would frequently work right along with the miners. In much of the lore, they were seen as a good being, and much to their namesake, would warn miners of an imminent collapse by tapping on the walls of the mine. Many claim that this subtle warning saved a lot of lives. That is, as long as people believed in the beings existing. There are tales of skeptical miners who refused to acknowledge the tales, only to end up trapped, while those who did believe would manage to get out in time. In researching this topic, I did find a peculiar tale where during a collapse, both miners and Tommyknockers were seen rushing to the exit. Due to them providing the warning of a collapse, many workers would leave behind offerings of food or other provisions in order to appease or thank the spirits. In some legends, Cornish workers would actually leave room at the local bars for the creatures to grab a drink as well. Although, when it comes to the knock sounds, it should be noted that in some tales, things became confusing, due to the knocking sound meaning a collapse, or it could also indicate a Tommyknocker was showing the workers where a rich seam of ore was located. To me, using the same sound for both of these seems really counterproductive. Although it is said that they would knock in different amounts, depending on the meaning. 2 knocks would mean that miners should work in a certain area, while 3 symbolize the opposite. There are claims of a more sinister nature, in that the knocking sounds originated from these beings actually picking away at the tunnel supports, in which they were trying to cause a collapse. Much like any being that is similar to this, they are mostly helpful, but can also play pranks, or at worst, cause death. Their pranks can range from stealing a worker's food, their tools, knocking off workers' helmets, or pulling their ears. In a real scary scenario, they were said to extinguish the fire around the workers and leave them to become lost in the pitch black mines. It should be said that some state that the beings will actually call to a worker by name and lure them deeper into the mine. From what I could gather, most of the pranks, or worse, were normally focused on people who didn't believe in these beings or openly mocked them. Although it was said that simply whistling while in the mines would be enough to be considered mocking them. In some variations of the lore that especially seemed to spring up once they came to the US, some actually viewed the Tommyknocker as a ghost, or even as the ghost of a miner who had lost their life. This is a really interesting bit of information, since within the lore, there are claims that these beings can present themselves as a ghost. In these stories, workers have claimed to see an odd glowing light emerge from the deep within the tunnels. This would then turn into a human form and vanish in a puff of white smoke. It is said that if this was ever seen, that it was best to run, since something bad was about to happen. In these tellings, the Tommyknockers may be the spirit, or they could actually conjure one up. Some lore take an extremely odd twist, when some claim that Tommyknockers were rarely seen, and for a good reason. In these stories, it is said that just by laying eyes on the beings, it will cause a person to die. This idea does go against most thoughts on the creatures, so it is likely this information was added later to spice the story up. What is known is that perceptions seemed firmly split on how favorably these beings were viewed. As such, you see this a lot in the lore, where workers would actually refuse to enter a mine that was believed to have Tommyknockers in them. Then, on the other side of the coin, many Cornish workers would actually refuse to enter a mine unless they were assured by the company that hired them that Tommyknockers were active in the mine. In a real strange twist, in El Dorado County of California, one of the largest and oldest mines was sealed up. So in 1956, miners actually formed a protest towards the general manager to reopen the mine. The whole reason behind this wasn't to resume their work, but to allow the Tommyknockers trapped inside to be able to freely leave the mine and continue working in other ones. As odd as this sounds, the manager actually conceded and reopened the mine for a period of time. Fortunately, the lore behind these beings actually have some very real stories that beg the question if they may actually exist. There are many tales, including one from Smokeshire Hills, where 7 miners were working in a gold mine when they started to hear a peculiar knocking sound. 4 workers believed it was a sign from Tommyknockers to leave the mine, but 3 openly mocked that idea and even yelled out, "Come on, Tommyknockers, show us what you can do." Not long after this, the mine collapsed, and the 4 who believed in Tommyknockers survived, while the other 3 did not. It is said that this mine still has plenty of gold, but no one dares to enter it. To this day, people claim that if you near the opening, you can still hear the creatures mining away and quietly talking. Another story comes from Cripple Creek, Colorado. At the Mamie R mine, many workers openly refused to enter it for fear of the Tommyknockers that were said to reside inside. Well, it didn't take long for the mining company to find other workers who didn't take such stock in old legends. So they entered the mine and started working as if nothing odd was happening. This would end badly when a man named Hank Bull claimed that he could hear the sound of a young boy calling out to him from a newly opened tunnel that had yet to be fully cleared. Hank decided to follow the voice, which would lead him deeper and deeper into the tunnels. Suddenly the other workers heard Hank scream, and when they finally managed to get to their partner, they found that Mr. Bull had been killed when the ceiling collapsed where he was. It is said that many of the men decided to move on to other mines, and only a handful remained at the Mamie R mine. This may not have been a good decision, since not long after, many of the remaining workers frequently claimed to hear whispering and see odd shadows moving about the tunnels, only to vanish into thin air. Not only this, but the crane that they used to lift ore out of the mine, called a windlass, had a bell on it that the workers would ring 3 times when it was time to bring a load up. Many times the bell would ring, but when the crane was raised, nothing would be on the platform. Then, on November of 1894, another man was killed when a bucket fell from the windlass and crushed his skull. The odd thing is that even though the bucket had been tied securely, it fell due to the rope being untied, which shouldn't have happened. After this time, workers claimed to see the ghost of this man, crushed skull and all, as well as the spirit of Hank Bull wandering around the lower parts of the mines. Finally, on December 24th, 1894, the mine began to flood, and the workers tried in earnest to bail it out. On Christmas Day, an oddity happened when the windlass inexplicably blew apart, sending fragments everywhere. Buckets and ropes rained down into the mine shaft, and one of those ropes actually managed to wrap itself around the windlass operator's neck, and it became so tight that it decapitated him. After all these events, the workers finally started to believe in Tommyknockers being present, and refused to work in the mine. The Mammy Arm Mine officially shut down in 1895. It is worth noting that the Crescent Mine in Sumter, Oregon, and the Phoenix Gold Mine in Idaho Springs, Colorado, all have stories claiming that Tommyknockers are said to reside within the tunnels. Many claim that the real basis for these stories about Tommyknockers originates from the sounds that miners hear of seams moving or even supports knocking, both of which can lead to dangerous circumstances. Although, who knows? Those sounds could simply be a little green-skinned miner telling you to leave his caverns. As I end this, I wanted to tell you that I originally had a more in-depth plan for this video. I actually figured that there wasn't enough information to talk about solely on Tommyknockers. As such, I had a list of 6 other beings that were very similar, and this was basically going to be a list video. Very quickly, I realized I had already written 2 full pages of my script and still was on the topic of Tommyknockers. So, this video became based on them. Also, I wanted to note that within this creature's lore, the Cornish of the time had a very derogatory view against a particular group of people of where some of these beings came from. While I am all for preserving history, I am personally choosing to omit this information. I did this for 2 reasons. A, it doesn't add or take anything away from the story, and B, many other locations around the world with different cultures speak of the same creatures and don't include lore that is biased towards a certain group of people. I do want to state that in preparation of comments thinking I'm trying to be too PC, I want to say that isn't the case. I am sorry for this long exposition, but I knew some would question if I forgot to include it or completely missed it. If you haven't yet done so, do please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Also, it would be greatly appreciated if you share my videos with someone you know who may be interested in this type of genre. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later!